Hi, everybody. Welcome to Stratosphere Lounge. I'm your host, Bill Whittle, and guess what? No sound. And now we're back with sound. I love doing this. It's like it gives me a means of testing the ping, basically. I'll come out on the show. I will intentionally leave the sound off. I'll start talking as if I was really talking, mostly just moving my lips. And then I wait to see how long it takes for people to tell me that the sound isn't on, and that gives me an idea of how much ping we're getting here. And turns out it's about, I don't know, 7 or 8 seconds, something like that. I am looking at the comment section here after a late start, which I'll tell you about in a minute, and I am hearing people talking about BPS for Black Pigeon Speaks. It's a YouTuber apparently. Here I am new to this whole story. YouTuber got banned, I guess, or demonetized. Is he a black conservative? Can somebody tell me? I haven't heard of the channel. Or is he just a fan of black pigeons? Hard to say, really, at this point. I'll wait for the 8-second ping, and then it'll come up, and I'll tell you what some of the stuff we've been working on. And we will also cover a couple of things, and we'll look at some potential. He's not. Okay. His channel disappeared. Canadian living in Japan, banned. Okay. Was he 489,000 subscribers? Yeah. Okay, so there was a big stink about this, needless to say. Did they reinstate him? And again, we wait for the ping. Wow, it's... Okay, backlash, channel's back. Retired Navy lives in Japan. Okay. Reinstated 30 minutes ago. So there's hope for the country, folks. That's what that means. That means there's hope for the country. And it also means, and this is important, it also means that not only is there hope for the country, but it also means that there is a threshold of outrage that YouTube is not willing to cross. And so that's also exceedingly good news for people like me, and should be good news for people like you who like listening to these messages on account of you being free people and all. And so that is very, very interesting news. Joseph Talbot says every time it's a test, we have to backlash every time. Exactly. Steve Crowder being demonetized. I don't think that's been reversed. I haven't heard that it has been, but Crowder has enough views so that his revenue is significant. That would be a significant hit for him. I heard that the Trump administration was going after Facebook. I guess the Attorney General needs to be looking into this, and he needs to be looking into it while he's still the Attorney General. I'm feeling pretty good about 2020, but honest to God, this you need to get in there and get this done now, and you need to threaten them with monopoly regulations, which they essentially are, and you need to get in there real quick and do it while we still have the ability to appoint the Attorney General. Like I say, feel pretty good about 2020, but you never know. Somebody told me that BillWhittle.com just gave them a gateway error. I don't know if you can clear your cache. I don't even know what that really. I mean, I know what it means, but I don't really know how to tell you how to do it. But I haven't heard anything else going on, but mostly it's working. So anyway, that news came in just as we started rolling. So it took me a while to cut up for that. Started pretty late today, about 15 minutes behind schedule. The reason is because I cannot go into the details of it yet, but I can probably just tell you that I am working on a major production for the 50th anniversary of the moon landing, coming up on July 20th of 2019. It'll be 50 years ago. And we're doing a major 3 or 4 hour deal. So I was writing that, and I was trying to explain at the particular point when the show started I was trying to explain to people what was going on, because everybody remembers the moon. They just cheat a little bit, but everybody remembers the moon landing, and what they remember if they saw the moon landing is they remember Neil on the ladder and putting his foot down on the moon and then bouncing around and the flag and the salute and all that other stuff. But what very few people remember is the actual landing, and what I didn't remember until I saw in researching this, until I went back and watched the CBS News coverage. I don't know how many of you remember this, for the subset of you that actually saw the moon landing. But if you're watching CBS News, and 600 million people were around the world, there were 200 million Americans at the time, anybody who had a TV set was watching. What happened, and I didn't realize this again, I certainly didn't realize it at the time, I didn't realize it until just a few weeks ago. But if you look at the CBS animation, you get to watch a cartoon LEM and a big jet of flame coming out of it too, and it's flying sideways and down, and then eventually they shift to another, animation. It's like it's a drawing. Now you're looking down on the surface of the moon, and the first of the footpads is just cruising, and then you see craters underneath, and then you see the thing kind of landing in the distance, and then right on schedule, you see a plastic model LEM on a plaster moon, and there's rocks in the foregrounds, and there it is, the LEM is sitting on the moon. Only the problem is that the audio, which is coming in live, or second late coming from the moon, they're not saying, hey, Tranquility Base here, the Eagle has landed. The animation is showing them on the moon. But Houston, first thing that he says after you see them on the moon is you hear 60 seconds. And you just hear Buzz calling out these numbers. And for 40 seconds, I timed it almost exactly, for 40 seconds after CBS animation and everybody in the world had a picture of a fake LEM on the fake moon, I'll put it up. I'll put it up in the links right now here for the people watching live. Maybe I can do it for YouTubers as well, if I can remember. Hang on a second. You put it up here. Put it in the comment section. It's really awesome. It's really, really good. Okay, copy that. Yep. Hang on. But what nobody realized was that even though you're putting it up in the chat room, and I'll try to remember to put it up on YouTube. What nobody realized was that we were all seeing a toy lunar module on a toy moon, and they were still, I don't know, 60 stories in the air, 600 feet, something like that. Needless to say, I'm doing a check to get all the numbers and figures right. But what I'm trying to explain to people, at least when I was writing this particular bit, because we were talking about the whole space program, but as they were coming in, the initial stage of the descent, they're doing the descent burn. They're slowing down. The LEM is in such a position that that they're looking at the moon over their heads, and the moon is scrolling by. The thing's almost sideways. And as they're slowing down and slowly descending, they're watching these lunar features come by. And one of the lunar features on Apollo 11 was a tiny little ridge called Boot Hill, tiny little thing. And as this feature's coming along, they say, okay, I see it, that's Boot Hill. And they're watching it. And then it crosses a mark, a little inscribed mark on the windshield. And the second that thing crosses that mark, Armstrong makes note of the time. And it turns out that Boot Hill is crossing that mark sooner than they thought, which means they're going faster than they thought, which means they're going to go longer than they thought. But they did not know. They knew they were going to land long. They knew they were going to land long 8 minutes before they landed. But they didn't know what... I sent the wrong link. I'm sorry. Hang on a second. Here's the link. Hang on a second. I put the wrong link there. I put the actual landing link. This is the animation link. It's so cool to see. Hang on a sec. Here it comes. Where'd you go? Here it comes. Here's the actual CBS News rebroadcast. So they're basically fighting for their lives. They're certainly fighting for the mission. Because they landed long, they're going to land in a boulder field. Armstrong said large-sized boulders. Other people described it the size of cars or small houses. And again, it's great because doing the research for this, I find myself picking up little bits and pieces that I didn't know. And I'll just walk you through a little tiny bit of this. We won't go too much further into it. We'll save it for mid-July. But I knew that the lunar module. This is something that I needed to explain because most of the people who are going to be watching this didn't watch the moon landing, didn't live through the space age. So I knew that the lunar module was so fragile that if you were to take the lunar module, a flying lunar module, and put it on the floor of the Air and Space Museum, that the second you let it off the crane, the thing would just collapse to the ground. The legs couldn't support the weight of the lunar module in 1 g Earth gravity. The LEM was so fragile and so light that it only could stand on its own legs in 1/6 gravity. Most people don't know that the outer skin you see on the upper part of the LEM, just the metallic sides just right next to the windows and stuff, is about as thick as heavy-duty aluminum foil. Aluminum foil is what it's made out of, essentially. They're standing on a 2-inch honeycomb deck, but the skin is about as thick as aluminum foil, heavy-duty aluminum foil. Not that it makes much difference from light-duty aluminum foil. It's a fraction of an inch thick. And reason it's so thin is they have to save all the weight they can. The weight of the ascent stage has to be carried off the Earth into orbit, sent to the moon, decelerated, landed, and then go back up again. So every single pound counts. So the LEM was not pressurized to sea level like the Russians did. The Russians flew missions at 1 atmosphere with air. And the Americans, I think, a much smarter decision, flew much lower pressures. In the case of the LEM, it was pressurized to about 1/6 of atmospheric pressures, about 5 psi, pure oxygen. So even though they were getting very little volume, the little volume they were getting was all oxygen. So it's been fun doing the research and talking about some of the things, because I took a look at what some of the maximum drop heights were. So here's some things that I didn't know until an hour ago. First of all, there is a lunar module in the Air and Space Museum, and it is an actual piece of hardware. It's not a reconstruction. The landing gear had to be beefed up, obviously, but at the Air and Space Museum is LEM number 2. LEM number 1 flew on Apollo 5, which is a mission I never even heard of, to be honest with you, because Apollo 7 was the first manned mission, but I should have known there'd be Apollo 5 because there were Saturn V launches and so on. So Apollo 5 was an unmanned mission in Earth orbit, and they took the LEM up, and the LEM performed at least as well in the initial testings on Apollo 5 as it could have done, so they decided to skip sending the number 2 LEM up, and they just went right on with it to Apollo 9. So it's an actual LEM, but it is beefed up to withstand its own weight. And I didn't know about that being LM number 2. I knew the skin was thick. I didn't know how lightly pressurized it was. But what I also didn't know were two things. I didn't know what the actual height was that you could cut the engine and survive it. And I also didn't know about Apollo 15. I mean, I knew about Apollo 15, but I didn't know what I'm about to relate about Apollo 15. So in other words, trying to, is that right, Rubber City Rebel? Anyway, just somebody just said, got a comment there that said Oberlin College loses punitive phase of a defamation case, and they owe Gibson's Bakery $33 million now. That's just too much. I can't believe that's true. Oh, awesome. Couldn't happen to a nicer bunch of commies. Sweet. That's just excellent. Great. So you don't have to bake the cake. Turns out it is a turns out it's a pretty good day for freedom here as we're recording this. Anyway, back to the story. So I'm trying to explain to people that while we are watching the plastic lem on the plaster moon, these guys are out there fighting for their lives. And I didn't realize how narrow the tolerances are. Apollo 15, as it turned out, Hadley Rill, wasn't it? Yeah. Hadley Rill, Frau Morrow 16, was it? And Taurus Littrow for 17. Anyway, Apollo 15 is landing. And as Dave Scott's bringing the LEM down, he's doing a beautiful job. He's got all the time in the world compared to Neil and Buzz. Just got tons and tons of fuel. He's coming down real slowly. He actually puts in a little bit too much thrust, and he starts going up again. And he starts coming down to land. He's got a nice clear field. Everything's great. And what I just discovered was one of the probes on the feet. 3 of the foot pads of the LEM have these probes. They're about 2 feet long. And one of them makes contact. He gets the contact light, which means it's touched the lunar surface. So the second he gets the contact light, he cuts the engine. But since he just had sort of, the contact light had hit the lip of a crater, it just kind of nudged the lip of a crater. So the LEM hits here. It's still considerably higher than it should be. He hits the kill switch. The LEM then just goes and crashes down hard enough for Irwin to go bam. Turns out that the LEM fell a whole 1.5 feet, less than 2 feet, and it was enough to kind of knock their fillings loose. It made Irwin go bam. You know, you could just, if you watch the landing of Apollo 15, it's like boom. And that's because the thing fell 1.5 feet. And parenthetically, landed on the side of the lip of the crater, and you can't really see it from most angles, but if you see it from an angle designed to show it, the Apollo 15 lunar module's it's really cranked. As it turns out, the Apollo 15 lunar module settled at an angle of 11 degrees off the vertical, and the limit for a safe liftoff was 12 degrees. Anything more than 12 degrees, and they did not think that there would be enough thruster authority to get the thing vertical in time. So it's amazing how light and how small and how thin the whole thing was. Anyway, all of those facts were really cool. That's at 1/6 gravity, as Mobile Moto points out. It fell 1.5 feet at 1/6 gravity, and that damn near broke the LEM. So I'm trying to figure a way to explain to people that if you run out of fuel, it's not like, okay, we'll just, crunch down. I forget what the exact number is, but I basically said, if you shut off that engine any higher than LeBron James, the LEM's it's just gonna break. Anyway, there he is, flying this thing to a landing. And another thing I learned, I hadn't really thought about it, but so they're using this flight computer, and I learned a lot about the navigation system doing this. So as what the hell was I going to say? I just saw a comment there that it grabbed my attention. It'll come back to me. Anyway, the whole thing was just nuts. And besides, not only is he trying to find I remember. So they're on their way down, and they're kind of going butt end first to slow down, and then there's a program code. I want to say it's I think it's line 64, P64. I think it's when the LEM just pitches up. It's part of the autopilot, and now instead of it going like sideways, now it's vertical. Now they can see the surface below them, and then they just kind of land the thing. So they're in this landing mode, and they're looking out, and Neil sees this boulder field, and all of a sudden the computer goes to, are you ready for this? The computer executes instruction 66. Execute order 66. The computer goes to P66. It's a true thing, Star Wars fans. Execute order 66. And Line 66 is the line command that gives Neil Armstrong manual control over the LEM. And that stud flies that thing down. And he's flying over and he sees this boulder field, takes a manual control, does the first thing that any pilot has been trained to do when they get into kind of a serious emergency is he puts the nose down, pitches forward. And that means that instead of slowing as it's descending, now it's just plain descending. It's basically just hovering. And he's hovering, just scooting along, trying to get past this boulder field before it runs out of fuel. So it's an interesting thing, and it's an interesting thing to describe, too, because I hadn't really thought about this, but I didn't realize quite how delicate or precarious the LEM was. So, if they were within 30 seconds of fuel, they were under 30 seconds of fuel. And if he decided to hold on, there would have been, there were three options at that point, at 30 seconds. They're already down 30 seconds earlier on the cartoon mode. And so at that point, Neil Armstrong's got three possibilities. He can either abort to orbit, just we're too low on fuel, we're not going to make it, we're going to just punch the thing up and get back up to the thing, and we'll have missed the moon by 40 feet, 50 feet. That was one option. Another option was to continue and hang in there and land safely and continue the mission and go on to mission success. And the third option was to keep trying to find that landing spot, run out of fuel, and if you're higher off the ground than LeBron James is, then the LEM is going to crash, and Armstrong and Aldrin's bodies are going to be the larger pieces of debris in a debris field that spreads out all over where the flag is supposed to be. That's a sentence I was writing as I was getting ready to get this show on the road, and that is that's quite an image, and that's what good writing is it's imagery. Just think of that spot on the moon, and you think of the LEM there, and the flag, and all the instruments. And if it had been a little bit closer, and Neil had decided to ride it all the way down, just a little bit closer, that area would just be filled with debris, and you'd have a couple of white spacesuits lying there face down in the dust. Not even the romantic kind of we're stuck here and can't get off kind of thing. You crashed. But the LEM was a soap bubble. It was a silver and gold soap bubble, and it had to be very delicately handled, and he did an amazing job of it. Anyway, so that's about it for that. We're going to take a look at the firewall questions for a while, and I'm going to try and get back to writing this thing. However, and I'm not putting anybody under any pressure, but last week, as you may remember, a couple people who I see here now were having some difficulties with some medical stuff, and I just thought we would check in on our friends and make sure that that some of the people who were talking in the last episode were able to get some of the help medical help that they needed, and if they hadn't, then we got to work harder, and we'll figure out what the hell we can do about it. So hopefully everybody's doing better. And Cody MacArthur Fitz says no mention of Order 66 being a reference on Wikipedia. The Emperor, when he says kill all the Jedi, says execute Order 66, and that was the program code he had to enter into the landing computer to get the manual control. So I'm going to assume somebody's probably typing. I hope everybody's doing better, and I hope everybody's actually doing well. It's incredible. And by the way, was it Kulak 76 says he saw the Apollo 11 movie. The Apollo 11 movie is fantastic. It looks like it was shot on HD. It looks like they had GoPro, 5s on the mission. So it was restored and digitally enhanced and all the rest of it. But Apollo 11 is a great movie, and I was watching the lunar landing scene from First Men, which I did not like at all. And I realized that it's actually an interesting exercise if you have the time. I put a link up there earlier for the, you could just Google moon landing out the window view, and you'll see, you'll watch the moon landing from a film camera on board the LEM. And you'll hear Armstrong and Aldrin, and you'll hear them talking to Mission Control. And then if you go back and watch the moon landing from First Man, you're going to find something really, really interesting. First of all, you're going to notice that in the movie, the LEM is it's that paint shaker thing. My understanding was that the lunar descent was glass smooth, and I would be surprised if it wasn't. There's really no turbulence or anything there. You just got a pretty smooth rocket, and you're going down on your way. So this whole kind of like the thing is cracking up, that was added for dramatic effect. I'll get back to that in a second. But most importantly, if you listen to the actors, because the actors are speaking the exact dialogue that actually came back down. And if you listen to them, you'll hear Buzz Aldrin say something like, drifting to the right a little, and you'll hear Mission Control say, 60 seconds. And if you listen to the actual transcript, what you hear is Buzz say, drifting to the right a little, and you'll hear Mission Control say, 60 seconds. And the point is that the filmmakers decided to crank up the drama and put more drama into the landing on the moon than a completely realistic recreation of the landing on the moon would be. And I'm enough of a storyteller to understand that that's, perhaps a necessary evil. But I think if somebody had been a little less lazy as a writer, what would have interested me, what I thought I was going to get, and I think is far more interesting, instead of this kind of neurotic Neil Armstrong who's just a bad, John Pershing got what I was saying. We had to put more drama into the moon landing. So instead of First Man movie, Neil Armstrong as a kind of a neurotic robot who misses his dead daughter, obsesses about his dead daughter, and is a terrible husband, a terrible father, and doesn't speak and doesn't have any feelings or anything. It's just kind of this cartoon, easy impression of Neil Armstrong, who's a very private man. And obviously the director and Ryan Gosling didn't go to the trouble to find out what that guy was just about. Because at no point in First Man does Ryan Gosling ever become Neil Armstrong. He looks worried, and I'm not saying Neil wasn't ever worried, but he looks grimly determined as these things are disintegrating. But that's not who Neil Armstrong was. And the second thing with the landing that was scaring the daylights out of everybody was that not only were they going to head into this field of boulders, but as they're descending, they are their computer breaks. As they're descending, their flight computer, which is showing them their altitude, distance, relative speeds, all of these things, as this thing is descending to the lunar surface, they get a warning. They get a code 1201 first, and then they get a code 1202 5 times, or once and 4 times, one or the other. And this is a computer error that they've never seen before, never seen it in simulations, never trained for it, had no idea that it was even possible. They're about to land on the moon, and they're counting on this computer for their motion and their position and altitude and all this other stuff. And the computer is just going 1202. It's just the blue screen of death, which even that doesn't mean anything to young people anymore. And if you really want to know what Neil Armstrong is made of, you listen to this landing. It's on the first link I put there. I'll try and put them both under the YouTube thing. But if you listen to the actual transcript, the actual mission audio, you'll hear Neil Armstrong as panicked as Neil Armstrong ever gets, because there's one moment in there when you hear him say, "I want an update on the 1202, please." That's Neil Armstrong in full-on panic mode. You could tell there was just a little tiny bit of like command urgency, like I need to know why my computer's not working, because we're about to land on the frickin' moon. and that's it. That's all. So anyway, that movie was a great disappointment. But Apollo 11 is like, it's just like being there. It's absolutely amazing, and I mean to do those guys justice. I mean to do the whole space program justice, including the parts of. That's funny. It's just, it's amazing, and basically cover the entire space program and growing up in the space age and all that other stuff. So I should have some more information I can give you about it a little bit later. Okay, so I have not seen. Yeah, PDI was one. They had two. They had two. Checking to make sure that I'm not seeing any signs of any trouble. So hopefully the people that were looking for a little medical care last time, they're doing a little better now. Yeah, the computer had a the computer had to be light enough to fly the mission, and so it had to emulate. Basically, had to pretend it was a bigger computer and take these computing tasks and split them up among, I think it was 5 or 6 different like nodes it could process. And so the computer is basically working on one problem, and then in something like 100th of a second, not a crazy fast speed by electronics measures, a couple hundredths of a second, then it moved down to the next one and work on that for a while, and it moved down to the next one. And if the inputs were such that there were more inputs than the 6 cycles could handle, then the computer, for the first time ever, says, don't know what to do. And as it turns out, that computer was designed so that if there was this kind of error, an unexpected error or an overload error, the computer would reboot itself. And as it turned out, that computer rebooted itself thousands of times faster than a modern PC, because it has thousands and millions, probably, honest to God, billions or trillions of times less to do. It's just really doing some fundamental math. But so basically what happened is they get the 1201 and they'd reset it, and the computer's just working and working and working. And then they'd get a 1202, and then, they'd get another 1202 and get another 1202, and Mission Control saying, we got it, you're go. They'd never seen it before. They just know the computer's not working. And finally, before they landed, they figured out that what is causing the 1202 is when they're asking the computer for a projected touchdown point. Every time they ask for that information and put in that verb into this very, very simple computer program, it just locks up. So Aldrin figures it out that, okay, so it's crashing every time we ask for this information. So he says, Houston, we need you to update us on this particular information, because when we ask for it, it crashes the computer. But the thing was just constantly rebooted itself, and it remembered the information from before, and so it was basically it was built to fail safe. Fail safe is a wonderful term. It's an engineering term, and it means that if something breaks, it's supposed to break so that it breaks into safety and rather into catastrophe. So anyway, it was just fun reliving all of that stuff, and I learned a lot of details, and there's going to be lots and lots and lots of these details in this program. All right, so moving on. Let's see. Why don't we just go right straight to the questions? And this time, I'm going to. Somebody made a cold-hearted comment about if only TSL was fail-safe, says Steve Darrow. You frozen-hearted bastard. How you could say something about this show that means so much to so many people. The Stratosphere Lounge is not only not fail-safe, it's actually the engineering term for the Stratosphere Lounge is fail catastrophic. That's the engineering model that we use. We have a fail catastrophic engineering model. That means if something breaks, it breaks in such a way as it completely, totally ruins the show. All right, so let's see here. I'm gonna try something radical here. I'm gonna go to BillWhittle.com, and I'm gonna take some questions from there, and I'll take a peek at Facebook as well. Although I don't know if Mr. Scott has had a chance to set up this thing, because I didn't I didn't do it. Oh, one other thing. We have had a lot of members. We have to open up a live. Hang on a minute. There might be. Hang on a minute. Is it under members? Hang on a second. You'd think I would know this. I'm checking the members blog here. I'm going to get this from Scott, who knows these things, and we'll get that figured. Members, okay. That's a members profile. Blog. All right. I apologize. I am going to have to get a little more training in this. I should know this, and I just don't. I should probably have set up that live stream for the website prior to the show, and I just didn't. So we'll go back to Facebook again, and sorry about that, members, and we'll get that error on this machine fixed. Yeah, the computers were real simple, and they had two different landing navigation measurement systems, and they would keep comparing them to each other as a primary and a backup. And when they agreed with each other, that was good. So anyway, all right. So let's see what we got here. We're looking for firewall topics because I've been writing, and just crazy amount of writing. And at the same time, it's the most fun writing I've been doing for a long time. Really, really enjoying it. And in fact, I couldn't put it down. I was 15 minutes late because I just was in such a perfect place. I just wanted to get this out. So let's see what we got. Did I not post it? No, I did post it. Facebook is so weird now, and especially if it's your page, there's so much stuff like above the fold. You got to scroll halfway down the page to see where you are live here. All right, here we go. Okie dokie. Let's have a look at some firewall questions, and I'm looking at the first one, and that belongs to Eric Blake. Eric, it's good to see you always. And let me just pull this over here so we don't have to worry about that. And then you can go away. And then you can go back over here. It's wonderful. It's a wonderful thing. Okay. Yeah, I hit a 1202. Exactly right. All right, so let's see what the question is. Hey, Bill, in addition to being a great firewall question, here's the cultural question you said to post again next time. Here's an idea to help our efforts in the culture war. Why not do a recurring series on good storytelling, great filmmaking techniques, etc.? I'd say conservatives certainly need it if we're going to have any chance at winning. That's a great idea, Eric. When we first started Declaration Entertainment, which was sort of the ancestor of both Daily Wire and BillWhittle.com, we did a set, which are in the archives. You can find them if you look for them on YouTube. But they're several years old now. I mean, they may be like 8 or 9 years old now. They're back there. But we did probably 5 or 6 episodes of a show I called "Take a Movie to Work," and what it was me taking a look at a movie and breaking it down, kind of politically, and from a storytelling point of view, but mostly politically. And I remember doing The Eagle, which was that one about the Roman Legion. I did Forbidden Planet. I did this one about this girl. I might have done 4 or 5 of them. It was fun. It's an interesting idea. To be honest with you, and I'm trying to figure out how to do it in a way that seems a little topical. And I'm not trying to skip ahead, but David Crean says, what about a firewall on the 15th anniversary of Marvin Heemeyer's Killdozer rampage? I'm behind the times here. I didn't know anything about this Black Pigeon guy, and I didn't know anything about I don't know what the Killdozer rampage is. Was this the guy who went plowing through people with the bulldozer? I'm not entirely sure. So I'll come back to that. Now, Eric, as far as answering your question goes, I will see if I can find a way to make some sense out of that. It sounds like a big job. So I'll get I'll give that some serious thought. See if I can find a way to get a handle on it. Yeah, principles of storytelling, not specific movies. Yeah. All right. So moving on until we get the Killdozer Rampage story. Steve Darrow here, top fan Steve Darrow, says, you've talked about It's a Wonderful Life, but I recently watched another Capra film, Why We Fight. You were looking for firewall ideas. I propose, that's what I get for trying to do two things at once. Colorado town demolished by an up-armored caterpillar. And the guy didn't kill anybody but himself, but he went and destroyed some businesses. I remember seeing video of this, that's why I rang a bit of a bell. I don't really know what I would do with that other than, I don't know. Sometimes it seems like Trump is killdozering the left, and other times it feels like we're being killdozered. But this restoring the channel due to public outrage is a very, very, very hopeful sign. Very, very good sign. So back to Steve. But I recently watched another film from Capra called Why We Fight. You're looking for firewall ideas. I propose a remake of a wartime classic, only updated to identify and expose the evil in today's world. Instead of the Axis powers, we face the media, socialist ideas, corrupt politicians, the intentional move away from constitutional principles, broken education system. List is too depressing to finish. Just as in the 1942 version, today's Why We Fight would lay out the principles of freedom that we all hold so dear and would expose the real threat those freedoms are under. It's a great idea. I did one similar to that called, I did a whole series called What We Believe, and that was a 6-part series. And then I did one that I liked an awful lot called Why We Suck. And it was basically explaining why it sucks to be a conservative, how it'd be nice if, it'd be nice if you could get free college, but you can't get free college, and that sucks. And it was really fun. I might have to figure out how to repost that again. But that Why We Fight idea is a very good idea, especially since I got sidetracked with this. We had a bunch of new members sign up as a result of the Crowder show, and then the New York Times piece of libel, and so we got a bunch of new members in, which is wonderful. And when we have enough new members to make us, self-sustaining, then we will be free from any kind of pressure from YouTube. They can't stop us. If we host the internet, put the videos somewhere, we'll put them somewhere, and people will get to them. So that's the goal now. But anyway, we had a lot of new members in, and a number of people wrote really, really moving comments to us. People who had just joined, and some people who just joined and already had gotten involved with the comment section at BillWhittle.com and already felt like they were at home and met their family, and other people who were just talking about how happy they were to be here and how nice it is to have people who share your values, and especially nice to be around people who you don't have to agree with on everything, and not become not become defriended or unpersoned because of it. John Galt, CSA says that Jordan Peterson's launching a platform for video. I've heard that. I've heard that he's working with Dave Rubin and some other deep pockets. And that would certainly be great. Be very great. I hope, ThinkSpot. I hope so. I would certainly, if a conservative site moves there, hosting videos, then we are there, and I'd love to say we're there and not on YouTube, but we have a lot of subscribers on YouTube, and we have a lot of material that's on YouTube. I've got backups of all of the firewalls, but all of these thousands and thousands and thousands of right angles and Bill Whittle Nows and all that other stuff only exist now on YouTube archives. And that's an interesting question. I suppose I already know the answer to it. But if somebody shut down your channel, they just plain closed you, would you have access to your own archives to be able to download that stuff and get it back. I bet you don't. I bet it's just gone. So the important stuff I back up. There's no way to back up, and there's really no reason to back up all of the right angles and things like that. They're almost always too topical. So let's see. Think spot. Okay. Good. Good news. I hope it takes off. He's a real amazing guy, and ThinkSpot is a great, great, great name. It just kind of dares him. But we obviously look. The main thing is there are two different issues here with this YouTube thing, guys. One of them is having a place to host the videos because we can't afford to host videos with the bandwidth needed. It just can't happen. There's Vimeo and there's Twitch, which is what we've moved the Stratosphere Lounge to, and all the rest of it. But as long as there's a place to post it, we can send a link to it and people can still see the videos. The second problem is the problem that's inhibiting us from taking just everything over to someplace like ThinkSpot and not giving it a second thought spot. And that is that despite the fact that we're being suppressed, there are still large numbers of subscribers at YouTube, and there are people that are used to going to YouTube to see the content. So we'll keep putting it up on YouTube. And then, as Mobile Moto says, we'll post the videos where also where all the humans gather. Anyway, yeah, I'm not, there's no way to back up those episodes. They're just we edit them here, and I've got all the firewalls, and I'm afraid that's basically it. So we'll see. But then again, while storage is cheap, the time necessary to download it and get it organized and stuff is not so cheap. Anyway, that's about that. The terabytes and terabytes and terabytes, says known miscreant Times Judge, and he's talking about just one Stratosphere Lounge show. So let's see, moving on. And Steve Darrow also includes a picture. Good for her. It is a person getting their wings, their Air Force wings, a young lady in Air Force blues, and she looks about as happy as anybody would. She's got those badass aviator sunglasses on and blown up. Yep, she looks just thrilled. So congratulations, Dave. Please pass on my congratulations to her as well. I think I might have given some advice. I think there was a potential colorblind issue. I saved one guy who's now got, oh God, I don't know, 9,000 hours in private jets. He wanted to fly. I took him for a ride. An engine failure. It was my first engine failure. And he wanted to keep flying anyway. He said that was his worst fear, and he didn't even know there was a problem until we were on the ground, so that was good. Anyway, he had a colorblind issue, and he failed the eye exam, the colorblind test for his just for his private pilot's license. And just kind of thinking on the spur of the moment, I said the color blindness test that you get, or you've all seen them before. They're like a circle with lots and lots of small little circles in them, and then some of the circles are kind of like a pink, like a light pink, like a coral, and then other ones are like a light green, like a sea foam. See, straight man knows these terms, but they're very low contrast. Anybody who's got normal color vision can clearly see the number 76 or whatever spelled out between the pink and the light green and light pink. But thinking on my feet, I said, the only reason I can think of that you need to be able to have a color, see color in the first place, would be for the light signals from the tower. If your radio goes out, the guys at the tower have an actual, it's like a gun, looks like a giant blow dryer, and they can aim it at you, and they can send you a red light or a blue light and two flashing blues, a green light and a red. Two flashing reds means one thing, one steady red means something else, and so on. But I said those colors are ruby red and emerald green. They're bright, bright, bright. So my suggestion to them was to go down to a flight school, offer to buy a half an hour of the flight instructor's time, walk out to an airplane, start it up, fire up the radio, and then ask for a light gun test. And that's exactly what they did. And this young man in question was able to look at the tower and without any trouble whatsoever determine the red light from the green light, and that actually got him passed, got his pilot's license, and has 3 or 4 thousand, more than that now. He's here 7, 8 thousand hours in private jet stuff. He's a great guy. Unfortunately, he was taken from us too early when he flew a airplane right through a very, very light pink cloud into a very, very light green hill. And other than that, I think he would have been just fine. Anyway, that's it. Steve Young, top man. Steve Young says Norman Borlaug, another excellent idea. I'm kind of looking for something a little more, I don't want to say topical exactly, I've done a little bit on Borlaug too when I did the What We Believe series. I talked about Norman Borlaug as a defense of capitalism. Norman Borlaug, for those of you who don't know, is arguably the guy who has saved more lives than anybody else in the world. Yeah, you're probably going to have to come in second or third when you get right down to it. Going to probably come in second or third or fourth after Fleming and Pasteur maybe, and what's his name? So, but he's in the top. He's in the top five. Norman Borlaug was an agronomist, American agronomist, and he was the first guy to start experimenting with breeding plants that could grow in very low light. Salk did an awful lot, but the polio vaccine, but the polio as a disease isn't even in the top 10, I don't think, of fatal diseases. It's was it Fleming who did inoculations and who developed penicillin? Was Lifton? One of them developed antibiotics, and the other one developed inoculation with the cowpox and the smallpox. Anyway, Lister, thank you. There it is. Anyway, so Norman Borlaug figured out how to grow plants where plants couldn't grow before, and he figured out how to increase the yield of these things, like these little marginal, little scrubby little corn cobs. He got those things really, really rolling. And Steve Darrow says that Norman worked at Texas A&M, and he kept up. He produced so much food in places where food didn't grow before that Norman Borlaug saved billions of lives and continues to save billions of lives. And nobody knows his name. And Jenner, thank you. Lister for antiseptics, Fleming for antibiotics, and Jenner for inoculations. That's it. Oh, Lister, how about that? That's undoubtedly where Listerine comes from. Never realized that before. Fun when you can put words together like that. Awesome. That's great. That'll help me remember, too. Listerine. How about that? That's cool. Okay, moving on. Jacob Belchak. I'm just going down the list. I think it would be interesting to do a dive on why everyone is angry, considering that the global poverty rate, global lifespan, literacy rate, democracy rule, and a whole host of others is literally the best time in human history to be alive. Absolutely true. Despite all of that, people, especially young Americans, are desperate for some kind of change when the things in place now have produced an age of miracles. That is rich territory to mine, honestly. Hang on a second. I always get distracted by these comments here. I got a quick question here in the comment section from P.R. Henderson. He says he's 19 years old, looking to get his private pilot certificate, working at a small town airport, and wants to know if he should get his license early or just have his fill flying with a few buddies and messing with the yoke. Well, one thing about getting your license, pal, will be very likely by the end of it, you'll figure out that that's actually spelled Y-O-K-E, not egg yolk. It's a yoke, the kind of thing that they put on oxen, the kind of thing that they use to pull. I'm just pulling your chain here, pal. Um, Look, uh, getting your license is a very different thing than going up there and fooling around. It's a completely different um, Well, first of all, it's an actual achievement. Getting your pilot's license, you get pilot's wings so you can just walk up to an airplane that you checked out and then fly away. That is a real achievement. Without question, the hardest thing I've had to do in my life was my instrument rating. That was just intellectually the toughest thing I've had to do because math is involved. Um, but getting your pilot's license is is a real achievement, and it requires a lot of money, which means hard work and discipline and commitment and years and all the rest of it. And it requires some degree of courage. I'm speaking for every pilot I ever met, uh, but I don't think there's really much doubt about it. I actually went through it twice because I learned to fly in gliders and I got my powered rating. But that first solo, it's not your license. That's the check ride makes you nervous because you don't want to fail the check ride. But if you do, you can take the check ride again. Um, but but the first time you solo, that is an attention getter. Um, it's a very I mean, it's the kind of thing is coming from the minute you start your flight training. You think about all the times you're up there and disoriented and kind of lost, and the flight instructor came in and saved you and stuff, and now you're going to go fly that airplane by yourself. And I don't know if anybody else has experienced this. I've heard many other pilots I talked to about it have experienced it. But my experience both times, my first solo in gliders and then later my first solo in a powered airplane, um, I was nervous about flying the solo. But once I started the takeoff roll, the thing I noticed both times was I was absolutely astonished at how much better I was flying without the instructor there. Um, I can't explain it. It's just like It was always a crutch that it kind of caused a hesitation. I was going to do this, but then um, and then it's like, but now he's not there, so you just fly much better, much better, uh, and um, and I cannot recommend it highly enough, buddy. It's an achievement, and it's more than just fooling around. And certainly going up there and hanging around with friends and flying around is probably more fun than not. But if you love to fly, you need to learn to fly, uh, and and do it. So that'd be awesome. I know we're back and forth all over the place here. I'm just trying to please all of the masters in the world here. Yeah, so that's a great idea, Jacob. I'll think about that one. Top fan, known miscreant Matthew Lloyd writes, the penalty for treason. What is treason? Does the word still mean anything? Is treason still punishable by death? Does the soft coup against Trump rise to the level of treason? I think it's an appropriate conversation given that Pelosi has said that rather than impeach Trump, she wants to wait until he's out of office and then put him in jail. Okay, let's just go through the list here. What is treason? Treason is willful actions taken against your own government that compromise the security of the government. This is just off the top of my head. Actions that put in danger the nation that you belong to, willfully committing those acts with the express purpose of trying to harm or destroy the nation. So that's what treason is to me. Does that word still mean anything? No, it doesn't. If the word meant anything, we'd be using it where appropriate, and we'd be using it in cases, well, certainly in the Hillary Clinton case. We'd be using it in the cases of all of these leaks and all of these people. This one woman who was an independent contractor, and she had all of these secrets and leaked them, and she's going to do a couple of years. What was it? What's her name? Something Winner? Was it like something like Reality Winner? Is that it? Something strange like that. Anyway, so it doesn't mean anything, and it doesn't mean anything, Matt, because because nothing has consequences anymore. And nothing has consequences anymore because we're so successful. That's really it, you know. And we have so much security and so much wealth that there are no consequences for anything that justify even a harsh letter anymore. Um, you know, it's like if you're living in a fort or a walled city or something, and you go down at midnight and open up the gates, that's treason, and you'll be killed for it, because if you do that, the barbarians are going to enter the place and murder everybody. Um, uh, but today, you can do things like post national security secrets, and even though these things may cost us enormous damage in the future, and certainly without question has cost us actual lives of operatives in the not too distant past. Um, there's just we don't see the harm. We don't see The average American doesn't see the harm that Hillary Clinton did, as the most flagrant example. Just don't see it. Um, and uh, and when we did a Bill Whittle Now about this for sure, when Nancy Pelosi said, you know what, it's better not to impeach Trump because, that's when I said, because they don't have anything. When she announced that it was better not to do it, waste of time, you know, he's beneath impeachment. Second I heard that, I said to myself, they got nothing. And I said it out loud. Turns out they got nothing. So I hope they keep doing that. Man, I'm getting really confused going back and forth with these two things. It's a little tough. I should probably just do one or the other, I guess. Um, let's see here. I'm moving down. Supreme Court. Jake Coster, just taking a look at this. Do I think the internet should be considered a root of instrument of commerce? And do you think exercising the Commerce Clause in this manner? The Commerce Clause is interesting because the Commerce Clause is used to justify anything. But Jake Foster basically asks if regarding interstate commerce, the Supreme Court has held that the U.S. government may exercise the Commerce Clause on the routes of interstate commerce, like roads, rails, and so on, and instruments of interstate commerce, like trucks and trains, and so on. While that is factually true, was an enormous error. The Commerce Clause is crystal clear. Commerce Clause says that Congress shall have the ability to regulate commerce among the states, foreign powers, and Indian tribes. If you're not a state, a foreign power, or an Indian tribe, it can't touch you. It doesn't say between the states, and most importantly, it doesn't say have regulate commerce among the people. When the Constitution was written, there were three parties involved, and they were very clear about them, and they used the same name every time. The three parties were the United States, meaning the federal government, the states, meaning the states, and the people, meaning the people. It's amazing how difficult it is to decode this cryptic language that they used. So when people say that, oh, the Commerce Clause says that we can regulate commerce like a trucking company or something, commerce between states, that's not what it says. You can regulate commerce between Alabama and Minnesota on a state level in terms of what the state governments are doing, because it says you can regulate commerce among the states. And if you happen to be an Indian tribe or a foreign power, then also the Congress has some authority over you. But to say what they want it to say, the founders would have said Congress shall have the power to regulate commerce among the people when they cross state lines. It's that kind of piece of chicanery and sleight of hand that not only is destroying the country, but makes me say with absolute confidence, 100% confidence, that are you saying the Supreme Court is wrong? I'm saying without question, categorically they're wrong. No, there's no question they're wrong. Obviously they're wrong, and they know they're wrong. So regulate commerce between the states. No, that doesn't mean a truck going from one state to another, and you know it. And when the Supreme Court makes a ruling like that, that's when it's time to say, well, the Supreme Court is wrong. I've had this conversation. You're just a guy, you know more than the Supreme Court. Yes, obviously I do, and obviously you do too, because you can read the Constitution, you can read an English sentence, you know what English means, and there's your answer. So I don't know. It's just. It's an interesting argument. I think if I was going to go after the internet or after Facebook or YouTube or anything like that. And this may be ending up what I end up doing, because with Crowder and this other thing, it's probably where I'll probably go tomorrow. But the big question for me is, YouTube is a private company, so is Facebook, and I know every one of you, like me, whenever we get a new software upgrade and we have to click the box to read and understand the agreement, I read every single word of it, 40 or 50 pages. I read it right down to the last comma, and I decode it. And it takes me about 3.5, 4 hours to make sure I fully understand what it is I'm clicking on. Despite all of that, there are they are private property, and I have no doubt that whenever I click those boxes, that nobody else reads either. I am agreeing to them doing what they're doing. No doubt. But I would argue, and I think most people would argue, that a 7-page legal document written in legalese that purposely covers up what it is they're trying to do, and that you had to click in order to gain access to. I think you can make the case that nobody reads those ever, and everybody knows that nobody reads them. Therefore, that's not a defense. And I would, the angle I would take, I don't know enough about the actual law to understand how solid this ground is, but I think it's a case of fraud. I think it needs to be regulated, because I think their activity is fraudulent. And if we have any lawyers out there, I'd love to hear about it. But here's why I say it's fraudulent. It's beyond question, taking Facebook as an example. Prager University has a couple million subscribers. Prager had the resources to go and find out what the actual data is. Prager discovered that Facebook provides a link to their video 2% of the time. 2% of the people that specifically say, like Prager University, like it, want to see videos when they come out. Of that number of people, which is millions, the videos actually go out to 2% of them. 98% of them don't know that there aren't Prager videos up there, because they clicked a button that says, I want to see the Prager videos, but that information is denied them by these algorithms, and that to me is fraudulent. I'm sorry, it is. And I don't know what else you would call it. It may say buried somewhere in the, undoubtedly does say somewhere buried in the end user agreement, that YouTube has the ability to suppress any content that they don't like. And while that is undoubtedly in there, that doesn't mean that it's not fraudulent. It is an activity that they are committing, an activity that their users are unaware of, and they know their users are unaware of it. Now, that to me is the definition of fraud. And that's how I would go at it. In a similar vein, although a different vein, the antitrust thing becomes a factor, because the issue with a trust is that there is no competition. An example I was using before was, what if I found out, and this is I think this is legitimately a straight analogy. What if I found out that I was getting charged double my electric rate, was double my neighbor's, because I'm a conservative? What if I found out that they decided to charge me 4 times what the person across the street was, because I'm a conservative? And let's say it was in the end user agreement that I signed with what is it? LA SoCal. I don't remember the name of the thing. Is that fair? Is that legal? No. And the reason it shouldn't be legal, when I am the kind of person who thinks that somebody wants to open a restaurant that charges a conservative 5 times more than they charge liberals, that's their business. I have no problem with that. SoCal, it's not SoCal Edison, it's the other one. So I'm on a pretty thin line here. I think people should be able to run the business the way they want to. But in the case of the electric company, if somebody opens a restaurant that says we're going to charge conservatives 5 times what we charge liberals, I can make a decision not to eat at that restaurant, or I can pay it. And so I think they have a right to do that. But if somebody decides that they're going to charge me 5 times the bill for electricity because I'm a conservative, this is a different situation because I do not have an alternative. I cannot walk away from it. I can't go someplace else. It's not a question of if you don't like the show, don't listen to it. I have no choice. I have to have the electricity. And and since I can't go to another electric company, they have constrictions that come with that monopoly, and I think that's no problem at all. So I don't think there's much question that Google is a de facto monopoly. It has entered the lexicon. Google it. Just go Google it. It's like a Hoover. People used to refer to the vacuum cleaners as Hoovers. You hoover the floor. Where's the Hoover? Hoover just made a vacuum, but they made I don't know if they made the first one, but they made the first one that sold. So and same thing with Q-tips and Kleenex. All of these are actual brand names that have become brands that have become so commonly used that the brand name now. Now this is an argument, actually. This is actually interesting for tomorrow. I always need like some kind of little hook, something weird, something different that you can kind of hang a firewall story on. And this is actually pretty cool. You know that it is essentially a monopoly. It's an interesting example there. Band-Aid, another one. Great. Yes, when you if I held this up, if I held up a cotton swab and I said to you, "What is this?" and I bet it'd be certainly be 9 out of 10. It'd probably be more than that. Probably be 10 out of 10 most of the time. If I held this up and asked what this is, virtually everybody says it's a Q-tip, even though what I pulled it's not a Q-tip. It is a cotton swab that looks exactly like a Q-tip, but it's not a Q-tip. It's a cotton swab. Q-tips are cotton swabs. Not all cotton swabs are Q-tips, but all Q-tips are cotton swabs, but it's not called a cotton swab, it's called a Q-tip. No matter who makes it, it's called a Q-tip because it's a great name. Same for Hoover, same as Cheryl pointed out, same for Band-Aid, same for Google. And so if it is if doing research on something, if doing a search for something has now entered the common usage with the name of the company, then that is a non-competitive business. Foghorn's making the case for Coke, and for some reason, I don't think Coke clears that bar. It doesn't. I hear people say Coke, but Coke doesn't automatically mean cola. It's close, but it's not quite there. Crescent Wrench, is that a brand name? Anyway, Vice Grips, all of them. Crescent Wrench. Anyway, so hang on, I'm looking. Genericide, process of a product's name becoming genericide is known as genericized is known as genericide. I'm gonna make a screen grab of that baby right now. Thanks, Trevor. Boom. That was useful. Okay, so this is actually a really good angle. Oh my God, here's another one. Hang on. Beautiful work, man. Here we go. So Trevor also gives us thermos, Kleenex, Q-tip, chapstick, aspirin. Aspirin's a brand name? I didn't know that. Dumpster? Didn't know that either. Where does it put that bloody file? Stop doing that. They've added something to this Mojave and it just drives me bloody nuts. Go away. So let's have a look at this list again. I have to copy it again. No. Bastard. Losing my mind here over simple things, as usual. All right, here we go. So here's some others on the list. It's interesting. Band-Aid, Velcro, Hoover, Jet Ski, Speedo, Google, Uber, and Taser. All right. Now, is aspirin a brand? I know it's acetylsalicylic acid, but is aspirin a brand? Does anybody know? Bear is a brand, but nobody says, "Give me a bear." Is aspirin the name of a brand that? No, I don't think so either. It was. We're gonna have a comment fight. Everybody stand back. If it was, I'd like to know. I'd like to know if yes, aspirin's from Bayer, and Bayer is the biggest maker of aspirin, Bayer aspirin, and so on. But is the word aspirin a brand name for Xerox, obviously, for acetylsalicylic acid? Aspirin was a trademark of Bayer. Aspirin is an it's not. I'm not confident enough with it. But in any way, it's good. Styrofoam. Styrofoam's a brand name. AKA Woody Fool. Styrofoam sounds more likely than aspirin. I thought aspirin was basically the name of the medicine, and was okay. Here we go. My God, Trevor, you are a wizard here. Hang on a second. Hang on, I'm going to just copy this one too, Trevor. You're turning into my go-to guy here on this stuff. Let's have a look. Oh, man. Keeps moving. All right, so here's what Trevor went to say about that. By 1899, Bayer had named it aspirin and sold it around the world. Aspirin's popularity grew over the first half of the 20th century, leading to competition between many brands of formulation. The word aspirin was Bayer's brand name. However, their rights to the trademark were lost or sold in many countries. All right, so yeah, it's a brand. Okay, well, this is the sort of the intellectual foundation for the argument. Would be that if if people assume that if you want to find out information about something, if you want information, this is the argument. If you want actual information, presumably you want the truth about something, you want to find out the truth of something on the internet, you want to find out something about the internet, something about something on the internet, you Google it. And if it turns out that by using Google, which everybody does, nobody's using web crawler anymore, whatever those other things were called, those other search engines. So if by using the search engine called Google, you think you're searching for information, but what you're getting is information that is colored by the politics of the people who are running the service without letting you know that, then that to me is fraud. That's it. That's it. In fact, I'm going to write this down before I forget. Hang on. Just going to make a quick note. I know this show has a lot of dead air. That's what makes it so interesting. Almost all of it's dead air, really, when you think about the content. And then the little moments of interest come out and hit you like a thunderbolt once every 2 or 3 weeks. Good. That's a great, great topic. We're in. Love it. That's what I'm doing tomorrow. And again, the thing about the firewalls is that they're not just data. The reason that they're effective to the degree that they're effective is they're data with the story. And if you don't have a story, then nobody remembers the data. So that's what I'll do. That's great. I will. I'll go to that list, and And that's gonna, because that's gonna surprise people. It's gonna surprise most people. Most of them surprise me, and I tend to be up on these things. Thermos, Kleenex I knew, Q-tip I knew, chapstick I didn't think about, but that's obvious. Aspirin could have knocked me down. Dumpster could have knocked me down. Band-Aid, when pointed out to me, that is a brand name. Velcro. Hey, by the way, I'm just going to do this real quick. Can somebody please holler in the comments section if they know for a certain fact that one of these is not an actual brand name? Trevor has been showing real quality information here, but just to back it up, because I'm going to use this list, these are listed as brand names for items that we call by their name. Uh, uh, so here we go. Thermos, Kleenex, Q-tip, chapstick, aspirin, dumpster, Band-Aid, Velcro, Hoover, jet ski, Speedo, Google, Uber, and Taser. Wow. I'm just going to keep it to the ones that we can count on that are real simple. And you know, here's what I need. This is what I need. In order to make this thing work, I need props. So I'm going to bring in, and I'm going to have here with me. So I'm going to say, what is this? And I'm going to hold it up, and it'll be a cotton swab, but it won't be a Q-tip. And then I'm going to hold up a bandage, but it won't be a Band-Aid. It will be a bandage. And then I'm going to hold up a jet ski, but it's not going to be a jet ski. It's going to be a watercraft manufactured by somebody not named Jet Ski. Kleenex. That's what I'll do. Those three. That's all. That's all you need. These are things that are in regular use, and maybe chapstick. But if that's what I'm going to do, have them on a table, and I'm gonna say, you know, is it, what's this? Is this a Kleenex? Is this a Q-tip? Here's a aspirin. Here's a Band-Aid. Only, and then I hold up the box. That's great. This isn't a Q-tip. It's a cotton swab manufactured by somebody. And this isn't a Band-Aid. It's a bandage manufactured by. This is great. This is great. This is really good. Really, really good. Sorry. I got to rebind that. I know I do. I just don't remember how. So anyway, did it on purpose just to test. All right. Let me just have a quick look here. Cameron Smith has a question called "Where did all the dads go?" And I got to tell you, Cameron, that is really, really good. And I think that whole thing is just a whole is a whole Stratosphere Lounge episode and firewall topic as well. Father Day's coming up. That'd be a great title for fathers. That's going down too, man. On the Facebook page, I'm gonna just copy this. Trevor Dool says, "You mentioned your father last week, and since Father's Day is coming up, what are the valuable lessons you learned from your dad or other father figures?" Fantastic. In connection with the other work that took up so much of my time last year, with the video games and stuff, which is not dead, it's just simply on hold while I try to maintain a functioning business here. It occurred to me that one of the great father figures in American pop culture today is Master Chief. I mean, seriously, Master Chief is the father figure for many, many, many young men. It's not the only one, but he's one of them. And Foghorn for the win here. In Spacebar, no one can hear you stream. Well done. So anyway, Master Chief Petty Officer John 117. And by the way, I have been keeping a list of things that the left has destroyed. I know the whole Star Wars story backwards and forwards, and a couple of others, but I had not realized that they basically have done the same thing with Master Chief. And look, I'm not a Halo player. I just, for some reason, it's great. It's an amazing franchise and all of that. I just missed that boat. I just missed it. That's all there is to it. So I never really played Halo, but I know a lot about Halo. The storyline for Halo 2 is just one of the best science fiction stories ever. It's just phenomenal. But switching topics off of the brand name thing, having gotten into the Halo universe, it's pretty clear to me that people are saying that in this last Halo, Cortana now is, she's drawn much more masculinely, and she's basically gone from aiding Master Chief to now she's trying to take over the universe, and she's kind of this kick-ass woman, kind of a, Captain Marvel kind of thing, and they're complaining about that too, I mean, it used to be a love interest for this guy. Now it's an enemy. And which really means, honestly, what the left is really doing is they're making Master Chief the enemy. And I see people say things about Master Chief that's just that's the kind of comments you would make about your dad. Yes, Cortana, as I understand it, is a hologram bound to a projector, but that's why it's an interesting love interest. But if you look at how Cortana was drawn in Halo 4 versus Halo 5, I think those are the correct numbers. They've had lots of different versions with different names. You'll find that the latest version of her is much more masculine, muscular, tough. The previous versions, she was much more feminine, and now she's also become a criminal mastermind, apparently. So once again, we're going to push our philosophy on you, whether you like it or not. There's another great one, Steve. And that's the issue between Steve Darrow's saying I need to do, and I don't, I'm not going to have time to research this in the depth it takes for tomorrow, but this definitely needs to be there. Steve Darrow points out I really need to do something about the enormous debate between W.E.B. Du Bois and Booker T. Washington, and how that debate, how we took the wrong road. We just, we blew it up. Damn you. Yeah, we followed the W.E.B. Du Bois path and not the Booker T. Washington path. I've made that case several times on this show, but he's right. It's something like 98% of the people out there don't know this story, and they need to know that story. It's a very good idea. Oh, somebody's coming up with details about Cortana. Anyway, I don't know. In any event, it's been a pretty disjointed show, more so than usual, I guess. So I think I'm gonna leave disjoint and head home and get some more writing done at home. I have an enormous, really shockingly large amount of actual writing to do, and I don't have much time to do it with. So I'm gonna split this joint. And sorry about the abrupt ending, but I think I really do need to just all over the place tonight. So this show is brought to you by the paying members at BillWhittle.com, of which there are now at least a couple hundred more than there were this time last week. So if you're a new member and happen to be watching tonight, thank you. If you're a longtime member and you see new members, or you see a new member comment over at BillWhittle.com, it would mean a lot to me if you went in there and just said hi and made them feel at home. That's great. And CP Tome says, thanks for the latest firewall. You're welcome. I hope some people took some action on it. And this argument that if it saves one life, then it's worth it. Ban guns. If it saves one life, then it's worth it. It's silly. But in a case like this, It really is. It's like if somebody goes in and gets checked. Martin Archer, I was kind of looking for you earlier there when I was saying I wanted to see if we could follow up, and it looks like we still got some problems here. So we want to. Reason I brought it up earlier was I want to make sure that everybody's getting connected to what they need through the voluntary, non-coercive charity out of the goodness of their hearts, as opposed to taking money out of my wallet and then giving it to somebody and having them thank you and not me. That's a pretty pithy little statement too, actually. So I'm afraid that'll do it, guys. I'm getting tired and I need to focus. So I will be back next week, as far as I know. Let me just check the schedule. Don't think there's any plans to go to the moon. Nope, nothing. So next week it is, and we will see you then. And I will say hi to the lovely Natasha, who hopefully is watching now. And baby, I'm coming home. And I think that'll do it for this edition of the Stratosphere Lounge. So we will see you good folks next week. Take care. Bye-bye. Idiots.